What really happened inside the Beverly Hilton on February 11th, 2012? Why was her body left upstairs, cold, sealed behind a door, while a party played 4 floors below? Why did the man who owned her voice, her debt, her name, not stop the music? What if the party wasn't a celebration, but a completion? What feeds on the gifted? What collects what it is owed? What operates by one law and one law only, that its will is the only will that matters? What hides in a name you've been saying your whole life without ever once reading it backwards? Evil C was there the whole time. I was there too. I was just the florist. I was unseen, and the unseen see everything. I have worked Grammy weekend at the Beverly Hilton for 11 years. I know this building the way you know a person you have spent too much time with. I know which corridors run cold in February. I know which elevator hesitates between floors. I know the particular sound the lobby makes at 6 in the morning when the chandeliers are still on from the night before, and the marble is still warm from the day before, and the whole place exists in that strange suspended hour between what just happened and what is about to. I know this building. And the morning of February 11th, 2012, it did not know me back. Something was wrong before I could name it. It started in the service bay. I was unloading the morning delivery, white roses, white lilies, birds of paradise, fresh, perfect, wrapped tight, standard Grammy order. I had placed the same flowers in the same arrangements in the same locations for 11 consecutive years. But that morning my hands kept stopping, not from cold, not from fatigue, from something underneath both of those things, something animal, something that lives below thought and below reason and has kept human beings alive since before we had words for what we were afraid of. The flowers were braced. I know how that sounds. But in 22 years of this work, you learn that flowers feel things before people do. You learn to read them the way sailors read water. And every stem in that cart that morning was tight, rigid, closed. Not from cold storage, but from something else entirely. Something they had already sensed about the day ahead. I told myself it was nothing. I loaded the cart. I went inside. The lobby felt thick, not warm, not cold, present, like the air itself had weight, like the building was holding its breath and had been holding it for some time. And the pressure of that had begun to accumulate in the walls, in the carpet, in the space between people's words. The staff moved faster than necessary, not rushed, nervous. Conversation stopped when certain people entered rooms. A colleague I had worked alongside for 6 years walked past me in the East Corridor and did not make eye contact. Not rudeness, fear. The specific economy of movement that belongs to people who have decided not to see what they are seeing. Then I saw him. Clive Davis crossed the lobby at 7:30, unhurried, immaculate, moving through the space the way water moves through a crack, not forcing anything, not needing to. The people around him didn't walk with him. They orbited him. Careful, calibrated, never quite touching. I have seen powerful people in this building. Power has a particular texture, a loudness, a brightness, a need to be witnessed. What Clive Davis had was the opposite of that. He was still in a way that living things are not supposed to be still, quiet in a way that had nothing to do with silence. And as he passed the floral display, I had spent 40 minutes arranging that morning. The white roses nearest to him curled inward, slowly, deliberately, like hands closing into fists. I stood behind my cart and I watched it happen, and I did not move. He did not look at the flowers. He did not look at me. He crossed the lobby and he stepped into the elevator, and the doors closed behind him. And every petal on the arrangement nearest the elevator dropped all at once onto the marble floor, like something had been released. I stood there for a long moment in the silence he left behind. Then I loaded a fresh arrangement onto the cart, stepped into the service elevator, and pressed the button for the 4th floor. I had deliveries to make. I had no idea what I was walking into, but the flowers did. The 4th floor was wrong in a way I still don't have the right word for. Not colder, though it was colder. Not darker, though the lights up here always seem reluctant, like they were working harder than they should have to push back against something that kept pulling the dark back in. It was wrong. The way a room is wrong when you walk in and realize a conversation just stopped. That specific silence, the kind that has a shape. I moved through the corridor with my cart, head down, focused on the work, doors on either side of me, each one sealed, each one holding whatever the night before had left inside it. The carpet beneath my wheels was the same gold as every other floor in this building. Up here it looked darker, like something had been soaking into it slowly for a very long time. I stopped outside her suite, knocked, waited, the kind of wait that stretches, the kind where you almost leave, where your hand is already moving back to the cart and your weight is already shifting toward the elevator, and then the door opened. I was not prepared for Whitney Houston, not for the fame. I had been moving through famous people for 11 years. And fame is just a kind of loudness, a brightness that asks to be witnessed. I had learned to be unbothered by it. I was not prepared for her light. It came off her the way heat comes off pavement in summer. Not performed, not constructed, not the product of a stylist or a stage. Something that originated deeper than any of that. Something that belonged in a cathedral. Something ancient and chosen and rare. But it was struggling. She stood in the doorway and she was dressed and her hair was done. And from a distance, she would have looked like Whitney Houston on Grammy weekend. But I was not at a distance. I was 3 feet away, and her eyes were somewhere else entirely, fixed on a middle distance that did not exist in that corridor, focused on something only she could see, something she had apparently been looking at for a long time. She looked like a woman who had been running and had just realized she was out of road. She looked at the flowers. Something moved across her face that I could not name then and cannot name now. Not happiness, not sadness, recognition. The way you recognize something you have seen before in a dream you were hoping wouldn't come true. I brought the arrangement inside the door, and that is when I saw the flowers already in the suite. I had delivered them myself yesterday morning. Fresh, perfect white roses in full bloom. They were dead, not wilted, not drooping, dead, brown and collapsed and desiccated like they had aged 2 weeks overnight, like whatever was in that room had consumed every living thing in it and moved on looking for more. I had never seen flowers die that fast, not once in 22 years. I said nothing. It was not my place to say anything. I set the fresh arrangement down, and I turned to leave. And that is when Whitney Houston reached past the door frame and pressed something into my hand. Folded paper, small, tight, warm from being held. I assumed it was a tip, professional reflex. Pocket it, don't look, don't make it awkward. My hand closed around it and it went straight into my apron pocket without my eyes ever dropping to see what it was. But before I turned away, she held my gaze. One moment. One long, searching, desperate moment. Like she was trying to pass something heavier than paper. Like she needed me to understand something she didn't have the words or the time to say out loud. Then she stepped back. The door closed. Through the door, faint, unmistakable, her voice. A hymn, old and slow, and the kind of thing that belongs in a small church on a Sunday morning, with light coming through plain glass windows and wooden pews, and nothing complicated anywhere in the room. I stood in that hallway and I listened, and I want you to understand something. I have heard a lot of voices in my life. I have heard trained voices, famous voices, voices that cost millions of dollars to record and billions of dollars to own. But standing on the 4th floor of the Beverly Hilton, listening to Whitney Houston sing a hymn through a closed door, I understood for the first time what people mean when they say a voice is a gift. Because what she had did not come from practice. It came from somewhere else. And something in that building wanted it back. The hymn stopped. I looked down at my cart, the fresh roses I had just brought up, already black at the edges. I left the 4th floor and I did not look back. The note stayed in my pocket. I didn't know what I was carrying. They sent me back up at 2:30. The events coordinator found me in the ballroom, apologetic, rushed, already moving on to the next problem before she finished explaining this one. The 4th floor arrangements were dying. Guests were complaining. I needed to go back up and replace them. I stood there with a fresh cart and I did not move for a moment longer than was professional. 3rd time today, I thought. 3rd time that floor had pulled me back. And each time I had come down faster than I intended, with less completed than I had planned, with something sitting in my chest that I did not have a name for. Now a 4th time, I loaded the cart with the freshest stems we had, just arrived, still wrapped, still carrying the cold of the delivery van. I told myself it was just a floor. I told myself flowers die fast in dry hotel air. I told myself whatever I had felt up there was the particular anxiety of a high-pressure event day, compressing everything into something it wasn't. I told myself a lot of things. I stepped into the service elevator and pressed 4. The elevator rose, 1, 2, 3, then stopped. Between 3 and 4, suspended, the cables holding their breath somewhere above me. The lights flickered once, twice, then held. I looked up at the panel. The button for 4 was still lit. Then I made the mistake of looking at the mirror. My reflection looked back. I raised my right hand. The reflection raised its left. 1 full second later, I lowered my hand. The reflection lowered its, again, 1 beat behind, 1 long, terrible beat behind, like a copy being made by something that didn't quite understand what it was copying. I pressed myself against the back wall of the elevator and I stared straight ahead, and I did not look at the mirror again. The elevator lurched, rose. The doors opened on 4. The floor was worse than it had been that morning. I don't know how else to say it. The wrongness had deepened, accumulated. The air carried that smell now, faint, electrical, like ozone, like the charged stillness before lightning finds the ground. The lights were dimmer. The silence was thicker. The carpet so dark now it looked almost black beneath my wheels. I moved fast, head down, replacing arrangements outside each door without stopping, without looking up, without giving whatever was in that hallway anything more than it had already taken. The fresh flowers began dying within minutes of being placed. I watched it happen. I stood over a perfect white rose, cut that morning, healthy stem, clean water, and I watched it curl and brown at the edges within 4 minutes of touching that floor. 4 minutes. I know what healthy flowers look like. I know what dying flowers look like. This was neither. This was consumption. Something on that floor was taking whatever living thing I brought up there and emptying it. Completely, efficiently. The way you drain a glass. I was almost done. 1 last arrangement at the far end of the corridor. I turned my back to the hallway and crouched to adjust the bottom stems. That is when the cold changed. It didn't drop in temperature. It shifted in quality. Became something other than cold. Became absence. the feeling of warmth being permanently removed from a space, rather than simply never having been there. The kind of cold that has intention behind it. I felt it on the back of my neck first, then my shoulders. Then I understood that whatever was producing it was behind me. I stood up slowly. I turned around. At the far end of the corridor, near the stairwell door, in the place where the light from the wall fixtures simply stopped reaching, something was standing. Not a person, the shape of a person, the approximate height and width of a person, but assembled incorrectly, too tall by several inches, too still in a way that living things cannot sustain. The proportions slightly wrong in a way my eyes registered before my brain could process what the wrongness was. The darkness around it was not behaving the way darkness behaves. It was not passive, not empty. It was active, clinging to the figure, moving with it, produced by it, as though the shadow was not cast by the figure, but generated from within it, where the face should have been, shadow. And within the shadow, 2 points of amber light. Not eyes, not quite, but occupying exactly the space where eyes would be, dim, steady, ancient. The light of something that has been burning for a very long time in a place where nothing else can. It did not move, did not speak, but the amber points shifted, slowly, deliberately, downward, to my cart, to the flowers. Every stem went black simultaneously, not gradually, not one by one, all at once, like a switch thrown, like something extinguished. I ran, I left the cart, I left the flowers. I hit the stairwell door at the opposite end of the corridor, and I took all 4 flights without stopping, and I burst into the lobby, gasping, shaking, invisible as always, because I was the florist, because nobody ever looked at me twice. And the party set up continued around me like nothing had happened, because for everyone else, nothing had. But I knew what I had seen at the end of that hallway. I knew what was standing outside her door, and I knew the way you know things that live below reason and below language, that it was not there by accident. It was there by arrangement. By evening, the whole hotel knew. It moved through the staff the way bad news always moves, in whispers, in averted eyes, in the particular stillness that falls over people who have just been told something they will spend the rest of their lives trying to unknow. Whitney Houston had been found in her suite, 4th floor, the bathtub, the water still running. I already knew. My body had known since the elevator, since the mirror, since the figure standing at the end of that hallway outside her door with its amber eyes and its impossible cold and its darkness that moved like something alive. I had known for hours. The words just made it official. I should have left. Every reasonable part of me said, leave, go to your car, go home. Put this day somewhere you never have to open again. But the ballroom still needed tending. The arrangements were dying faster than anything I could explain, and someone had to replace them, and I was the florist, and leaving felt like admitting out loud what I had seen on the 4th floor, so I stayed. And that is how I was standing behind a floral display in the ballroom of the Beverly Hilton when Clive Davis took the microphone. The room quieted the way rooms quiet for power, not out of love, not out of grief, out of the specific gravity that forms around a man who has spent 50 years making sure that every person in every room understands, without being told, that he is the center of it. He spoke about Whitney, her talent, her light, her legacy. He said her name, and the room cracked open down the middle. Half the room wept, genuinely. The grief of people who had loved what she gave the world pouring out of them without apology. The other half raised their glasses, and Clive Davis stood at the front of the room and watched both halves with the same expression, composed, still, unmoved, and announced that the party would continue, that this was what she would have wanted, that this night, this celebration, was a tribute to her. She would want the music to play, he said. 4 floors above us, her body had not yet been moved. I looked across the room and I saw him, standing near the back, uncomfortable in a way he was working hard not to show. Diddy, a man who had never been close to her, a man Clive Davis had chosen specifically to speak her name that night. I watched him scan the room the way you scan a room when you're not sure what you agreed to, when you were starting to understand that the thing you walked into is not the thing you were told it was. He left early. I don't blame him. There is a name, old, documented, belonging to a man who built an entire philosophy around the belief that the self is the only law, that will is the only God, that the gifted exist to be consumed by those powerful enough to consume them. Aleister Crowley, the one who said, "Do what thou wilt," and meant it as scripture. The one whose doctrine requires an offering. The one whose followers face east when the completion comes. Clive Davis was facing east. He had been facing east the entire speech. When he finished, he turned and looked directly at me. Not past me, not through me, at me. The man who had never once acknowledged my existence in 11 years of Grammy weekends looked across that ballroom full of grieving, celebrating, oblivious people and found me immediately, precisely, like he had always known exactly where I was standing. He held it for 3 seconds, the same way the figure on the 4th floor had held it, the same amber quality behind the eyes. Then he turned away and raised his glass. I left at midnight. I walked to my car. I sat in the parking structure for a long time before I could make my hands work well enough to drive. I got home. I moved through my apartment on autopilot, coat off, shoes off. I began emptying the pockets of my work apron. My fingers closed around something small and folded. I had forgotten it completely. I stood in my kitchen and I unfolded it slowly, and I read what was written inside in handwriting that was hurried and uneven and pressed hard into the paper like the hands holding the pen had been shaking. "I almost drowned today." She had written it that morning, hours before the bathtub, hours before the phone call, hours before Clive Davis nodded once like he was confirming a reservation and told everyone to keep the music going. She had known. She had written it down, and she had pressed it into the hands of the one person in that building who was invisible enough to carry it out. The one person nobody would search, the one person nobody would think to ask. She gave it to the florist. She gave it to me. And I have been trying to figure out what to do with it ever since. If you made it to the end of this, you already know what you just heard wasn't just a story. If this kept you up, like it. If this made you think, comment what you think she was trying to say. If you need to know what happens next, subscribe, because we are just getting started. And the unseen see everything, or a harder, faster version. You felt that. Don't act like you didn't. Like this if the note broke you. Comment what you think she knew. Subscribe because the next story goes even deeper. And if you've been saying his name your whole life, say it backwards. Then tell me what you see.